Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And today is our special section. It's Chinese history. And Kwang is going to talk about the Great Disunion between between the 4th and the 6th century, around 300, 400 years period of time on the northern China. And next week, November 25th, we are taking off because it's Americans' Thanksgiving weekend. And December, we have the 3 more sessions. December 2nd, I'm going to talk about the Taoist tales from Zhuangzi. I post 10 stories, and you can start read. And then join our group. And the last section of this year is December 16th. CK is going to talk about introduce a great scholar, Chinese scholar on the 19th century, early 20th century, Hu Hongmin. It's a very special session, and that will be end of this year. And then I see Madeline, you are here, right? So, hi, Madeline.
Hi, Jason.
Yeah, I remember last time you asked a question for next year about the history of Chinese philosophy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, long or short? My answer is short. Okay, I go over that one. I think we better go short, and then I will insert some section from the long history. So by the chapter total is 28 chapter, but probably will run a little bit long. So that's my answer to you.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
I was wondering if possible, if we could do it in chronological order this time instead
this
of
time I'm going to do, because last time I kind of jumping around, skipped. This time I'm going to, I make promise to myself. I'm going to do chapter by chapter. All right, doesn't matter it's long or short. If it's very short, I'm going to provide my own material. If it's very long, I probably will divide it 2, or I just pick the important one. So that's the way I want to do. So
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, so there will be a more comprehensive, because I start to understand Feng Youlan as a person, a historian, a philosopher. It makes sense to know him more, and by go through, just like we run through the history of Western philosophy. And I also have a plan, if we can do it from the beginning to the end, that would be another way to understand the author's philosophy. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, everyone. And then that's our schedule. And then one thing, next year, we will start at the same time. I think we'll start from January 13, and then January 13, we will start from Steve. Steve is going to talk about the chess game. Not chess, Go game. Okay, so we will start from Go game, and then we'll go through for the whole year 2024. Anyway, thank you, everyone, and Kwang, we can start.
Okay, so hello, everyone, and thanks for coming for my presentation today. So as you read, it's about the Great Disunion between 317 and 589, so a period of 272 years. I think that some historical background would be needed to understand that period. Let's start with the 400 years long Han Dynasty, which started in 206 BCE and which ended 4 centuries later in 220 CE, or to be exact, on November 24, 220. And for those who are fans of Chinese historical dramas, TV series, you probably know the Three Kingdoms. So at the end of the Han Dynasty, there was the period known as the Three Kingdoms, having started on November 24, 220 CE, and which ended in 280 CE, 60 years later. And from that moment, you have a new dynasty called the Jin dynasty, Jin, from the family called Sima, Sima, which ruled China from 265 CE, but which ruled and unified China from 280 CE to 317 CE. So for a very short period of time. So we can see that from the collapse of the Han Dynasty in 220 to the loss of northern China by the Jin Dynasty, Jin, once again, you have about 1 century. So in that century, it's not really disunion, but it's not a very prolonged union, let's say. And from 316, when the capital city of the empire called Chang'an has been destroyed, the Sima family would move south of the Blue River of the Changjiang to keep on their rule, but only on the southern half of China for another century till 420. And after that, you will have 3 or 4 more dynasties that will rule southern China till the reunification in 581 CE by the Sui dynasty. And the main subject that I want to discuss with you guys today is not about the southern part of China during that great disunion, but the northern part. And the Sui dynasty, which will reunify China in 581 CE, came from the northern part. And here, for those who were present at my presentation on Wu Zetian some weeks ago, I said that Wu Zetian has been the product of 3 loves: the love of her father, the love of her first husband, and the love of her second husband. Well, the rebirth of the empire after practically 3 centuries of disunion has been the result of the friendships, the love, the collaborations between many people. But I will focus on 3 of those friendships or loves today to explain the period of disunion and how it will bring to the rebirth of the empire in 581 CE. The 2 main concepts that I would like to introduce is that China can be explained in many manners, but one of the way to explain present-day China, that it has been the interaction, the result, or the product, or the child of the interaction between what we call Zhongyuan, meaning the central plane, where you have the Confucianist tradition, the scholarly tradition, and the organization according to sedentary people. And Caoyuan means the prairies, okay, the peripheral lands, where you have the nomadic people. And those nomadic people have been integrated within the idea of China progressively from the Zhou dynasty. Because let's not forget that the Zhou dynasty, and I make a jump back in time, having ruled China from 1046 BCE to 256 BCE, was a quintessential Chinese dynasty. But at the time, let's not forget that around the royal domain were many tribes who have been incorporated or integrated progressively within the Chinese sphere. That process has been an ongoing process for practically till the end of the Chinese Empire in 1912. So practically over 3,000 years. And today, the period of that we call the Great Disunion, because it lasted almost 300 years, from 317 to 581, has been one of those major moments of integration of the nomadic people within the Chinese civilization, a crucible, or the Chinese civilization matrix. So I said that from 317, the Sima family or the Jing dynasty moved south to keep on the traditional Chinese culture and the traditional Chinese form of government. The north was divided into many kingdoms between 317 and, let's say, 386. Why I say let's say? Because in 386, not everything has been completely solved, but essentially in 386, there was a nomadic people called the Xianbei, Xianbei, which was ruled by a family or a clan called the Tuopa, Tuoba, and that Tuopa clan will create what is called the Wei dynasty, okay, Wei. And that Wei dynasty will rule from 386 to 535. And it's very important because it's thanks to that Wei dynasty that the process of integrating of the nomadic people within the Chinese civilizational matrix wouldn't be done. And precisely, it was the presence of Empress Dowager Feng, Feng, who was a Han Chinese, who influenced a lot her grandson called Emperor Xiaowen of the Wei dynasty, who will introduce a lot of intellectual and administrative and cultural transformation within the land ruled by the Wei dynasty, meaning northern China. So I want to mention some element, okay? 317, form of Chang'an, the capital city of the Jing dynasty. 316, I'm sorry, and 317, the beginning of the Jing dynasty in the southern part of China. In 310, what the major ancestor of the Wei dynasty, Tuoba Yilu, Tuobayliu, was created Duke of Tai by the Jing dynasty because he helped the last emperor of that dynasty in the northern part of China to deal with the nomadic people attacking northern China at the time, and he got the reward of having been created Duke of Tai. And from that Duke of Tai, the Wei dynasty will be created later on in 386. From 535, I said. The Wei dynasty has been divided in 435 into what is called the Eastern Wei dynasty, which will not last very long, who will be finished in 550. And the Western Wei dynasty will start in 535 and will end later on. And it will be the beginning of the famous Zhou dynasty, the Northern Zhou dynasty that will give rise to the Sui dynasty, okay? So 386, the beginning of the Northern Wei dynasty. I know that there will be a lot of events. 439, Northern China is completely reunited by the Northern Wei dynasty. 465, Emperor Wen Cheng of the Wei dynasty died. Wen Cheng, W-E-N-C-H-E-N-G. 466, Empress Dowager Feng, F-E-N-G, overthrew the autocratic regent Yifu Hun, Y-I-F-U-H-U-N. in 471, Emperor Xianwen, Xianwen, retired at 17, and Emperor Xiaowen began his rule at 4 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And here, Empress Dowager Feng will play a big role because she will influence tremendously Emperor Xiaowen, Xiaowen, who will rule between 471 to 499. So he ruled nominally for 28 years, but Empress Dowager Feng will be very influential till her death in 490. I would say that from 471, the beginning of Emperor Xiaowen rule, to the death of Empress Dowager Feng in 490, she was in reality the ruler of the Wei Empire and not the young Emperor Xiaowen. Between 490 and his death in 499, Emperor Xiaowen will truly rule. Just mentioned that in 485, there was an important reforms called land reforms. And in 494, they moved south because before it was Pingcheng, nowadays known as Datong, D-A-T-O-N-G, who was the capital city of the Wei dynasty. And in 494, they moved to Luoyang, to the south of the country. And Luoyang was the seat, the usual seat of the imperial capital city of most of the Chinese empires before them. And because of internal strife and struggle, the Northern Wei dynasty ended in 534. That dynasty split into the Eastern Wei, as I said, in 434, which ended in 550. That dynasty called Eastern Wei will give birth to a dynasty called the Northern Qi from 550 to 577. The Northern Wei, which ended in 534, will also give rise to a Western Wei dynasty, which will be more important for us, as I will explain, and that Western Wei dynasty will last from 535 to 557, with the capital city at Chang'an. And when the last emperor of the Western Wei has been deposed, the Northern Zhou dynasty from 557 to 581, and from that Northern Zhou, the Sui dynasty will be born, which will last from 581 to 618. And because of that Sui dynasty, the Tang dynasty will be born, and which will last for almost 3 centuries, from 618 to 907. I know I gave a lot of numbers, but I wanted to give those numbers because it's important to know them for understanding the history of China. And I hope that you will come back later on during the Q&A sessions about those numbers. And before opening the first session of interactive discussion, I want to say that what is important with all those numbers and all those names of dynasty is that at the core of them, there is a group called the Guanlong Aristocracy, and Guanlong is written G-U-A-N-L-O-N-G, and that Guanlong Aristocracy is a mix of Han Chinese and of nomadic people who intermarry and who interact a lot during those 3 centuries of disunion from 317 to 581. And it's from that Guanlong aristocracy that the Chinese empire will be reborn, combined with the Yang noble house, Yang. And the Yang noble house is an old aristocratic family having its root during the spring and autumn period. Okay, according to traditional history, the beginning of the Yang family was with Ji Po Qiao, and Ji Po Qiao was a younger son of Duke Wu of Jing, but not the same Jing than the imperial Jing dynasty. Okay, that is a Jing kingdom or principality from the spring and autumn period. And to give you an idea, Duke Wu, the father of Ji Po Qiao, died in 677 BCE. Okay, so before Confucius. So just to give you an idea of the origin of the Yang family, and that Yang family would play an important role at the court of the Han Dynasty, Eastern Han Dynasty, and Western Han Dynasty during the Three Kingdoms period, and during the Jing period, and of course during the Guanlong aristocracy era, since it's by the marriage of some of them with the members of the Guanlong aristocracy that the Chinese empire will be reborn. Just to give you a major example of that, the creator of the Sui dynasty, Yang Qian, Yang, his family name, Y-A-N-G, and Qian, his given name, J-I-A-N, was a member of that Yang family from Hongnong. Hongnong is a place in central China. It's written H-O-N-G-N-O-N-G. And the wife of Yang Qian was Tuku Jialuo. And maybe for you, it's not obvious if you don't speak Chinese, but Tuku Jialuo for a Chinese speaker sounds not Chinese, okay, sound Turkic. And it's precisely Tuku Jialuo came from a Turkic family, part of the Guanlong aristocracy. Okay, so when they marry, I think that Yang Qian was 17 and Tuku Jialuo was 14, if I'm not mistaken. And when Yang Qian became emperor under the name of Wan Ti, he was 40 years old and she was 37 years old. And it was a couple, it was a very united couple, okay, who was at the origin of the reunion or the union of imperial China. So I think I talked for about 10 to 15 minutes. I stop here because I want to have a first period of interaction so you don't have to undergo a long speech of many hours. So let's go for the first question, comments, reaction. And maybe if something was not clear in the numbers that I gave, please don't be shy. It's quite complicated. Even the Chinese are a little bit lost with those years and those dynasties.
So please raise your hand if you have any question. And we know Kwang has a super memory about the number and the names. So if it's not clear, and just please ask.
Okay, so I take for granted that everyone understood all those numbers and all those events. We can go further. Sorry? Someone said something. Oh, Jason, you...
Yeah, probably the background noise. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. It's a really dumb question. But
please, there's no dumb question. Please go ahead.
It's sort of not even serious. There's a series on YouTube, Empress Dougal. Is that the one that you're talking about? Or Legend?
Yes. Yes, it's about Tuku Chialo, the wife of the first emperor of the Sui dynasty. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know.
And there's also a TV series on Empress Dowager Feng. But I see that there are hands, but I don't know which one, which hand was first.
Yeah, Fred.
And there's a lot of empresses here. Did they get along?
Yes, because you have they were at different moment, okay? Because Empress Feng was a 5th century woman. She was born in Empress Dowager Feng, was born in 442, and she died in 490. So your question is very interesting because
excuse me, I think Fred, you are asking about on the presentation on this chart, we see a lot of emperor.
Yes, and so
sorry, this one is the intention to show the Dugu family. The Dugu, you see the title called the family, family of Dugu sister. So this one's intention to show this family from this guy, Dugu Xin, right? He has a few 7 or 9 daughters, and then 4 or 5 become emperors during the different periods of time. Okay, so so if you only see this picture, you may see like, wow, it's about the emperors. Are they getting along? But actually, it happened during the different time. So sorry, Quan, that's my answer. So go ahead.
No. I think that I'm very grateful for your intervention and for that family chart. Okay, because let's keep on with that family chart. You see here the graphic representation of the Guanlong aristocracy. Okay, Guanlong, G-U-A-N, and the G is pronounced like a K, like in kangaroo. Guanlong, L-O-N-G. I insist on the writing in Pinyin and the pronunciation of that group because that group has been extremely important for the history of China. Okay, the Guanlong aristocracy. And you see here many family names. And if we go to the top of the family chart, on the left side, you see Yuan Bao Ju. Yuan is the Sinicized name of the Tuopa family. Okay, once again, the family which created the Wei dynasty, having ruled northern China from 386 to 557, if we count the end of the Western Wei dynasty, has been the Tuopa, as Jason wrote, the T-U-O-B-A, and they changed their name in Chinese. The Chinese or the Sinicized form is Yuan. After that, you have Yuwen Tai. Yuwen Tai is very important because it's because of the friendship between Yuwen Tai, who was born in 507 and who died in 556, and Su Chuo, Su, S-U, his family name, Chuo, S-H-U-O, who was a Han scholar, born in 497 and died in 546, that the process of Sinicization kept on in a harmonious manner. And as I said, the history of China has been a dynamic interaction between Zhongyuan, the central plains with the, let's say, Confucianist aristocracy, and Cao Yuan, the prairies with the nomadic aristocracy. And the fusion of those two aristocracies has always been a dynamic process throughout Chinese history. But during the Great Disunion period from 317 to 581, that process of integration between the prairies aristocracy, the nomadic aristocracy, and the Confucianist aristocracy has been extremely important. Okay, so Jason, can you show again the family chart of the Guanlong aristocracy, please? Okay, and so the friendship between Yuan-Tai and Su Chuo, as I said, in the 6th century, and Tu Ku-sing is very important too, because as Jason said, he gave he gave birth to many daughters, and those daughters and their offspring play an important role because they intermarry with the Li family, and you see Li Ping here with Duchess Tuku, and he was the ancestor of the Tang dynasty, and also the Yang Qian also marry a Tuku empress, not the same, of course, and both of them would create the Sui dynasty. So I would say that for understanding the Guanlong aristocracy, this family chart that has been prepared by Jason is absolutely essential and central.
Yeah, thank you, Kwang. I'd like to interrupt here. Is whenever I see this one, the Dugu family, then if you are familiar with the modern Chinese family, that's the modern version of the Song family. the Song sisters married Chiang Kai-shek, married Dr. Sun Yat-sen, and then blah, blah, blah. That's if you are not finding this one is too difficult to understand, then you can try to understand the 20th century Chinese Song family. So.
That's true. That's true. But Jason, I would like to ask you one question.
Okay, please.
Who would be the equivalent of the nomadic people here? So the Song sister would be from Cao Yuan, then and Chiang Kai and Jiang Jieshi, and would be from the Zhong Yuan.
Yeah. So that's another question. Okay, so that's out of today's subject. It's just help you understand if you don't find it's too complicated. So we
Yes.
have Wen have a question, please.
Yes, thank you for this presentation. I'm glad to hear that even Chinese historians get a little bit confused with this, because I'm seeing all these dynasties going. I've heard of some of these, haven't heard of others, but I was struck by thinking, as China was going to disunity, at the other end of Eurasia, the Roman Empire was also going through a more controlled disunity. They decided the East and Western empires were just so big, so they had to split. So I found it interesting about the same time China was doing that too. But I guess my question is, with all these different dynasties and some controlling Northern China, some controlling Southern China, how do they view each other? Do they see each other as illegitimate states that should be conquered, or do they view themselves as all part of China? Or what was the interaction? I see Jason kind of shaking his head. So I think I may have a very complicated question. Well, a simple question, but a complicated answer.
Well, your question is very interesting because the Sima family, who ruled the Jing dynasty, but only the southern part of China, of course, views all those northern dynasty as barbarian and illegitimate. But and here is the interesting point, right? As you made the rapprochement, which is perfect, between the collapse of the Roman Empire and the collapse of the Chinese Empire, more or less at the same period. The fact that the northern part has been more dynamic for integrating the nomadic people, in my understanding, has been something of a major importance because it enriched Chinese culture and it gave Chinese culture a rebirth, because the southern part of China had an easier land to develop, if you want, and they were not as dynamic militarily and administratively speaking than the northern part, where the Chinese elite combined with the nomadic elite to create something completely new. And it's from that new blood, if I may say so, that the Chinese Empire was reborn. And the fate of Europe was not the same, since the Germanic princes or the Germanic leaders became the European princes, but the Roman Empire did not resurrect as the Chinese Empire, because for different complex reasons. But the same happened in Europe, meaning that the old Roman nobility also intermarry with the Germanic leaders at the time. But for complex reason, Europe became a land of different powerful countries and was not reunited as the Roman Empire later on.
Yeah, thank you, Kwang. So I know CK have a hands up, but I also like to answer this question, Wen's question, and then that's just my view. Kwang, if you disagree or you have a different view, just go ahead. My view is this: at beginning, the northern Chinese kind of integrate with the nomad, or you want to call it the barbarian, okay, the Turk people. So that's the first unification. And in the South is a totally different culture. And last year, during almost the same time, I have a presentation about this period of time. But this period of time, we are talking about the Neo-Taoism. Okay, so basically, they are talking about leisure life, freedom, debate, and talk about metaphysical argument. It's a totally different culture. You have to wait until the end of this disunion period, the Sui dynasty, to conquer the Southern Dynasty. Then they start to have, so they talk about from north and the west, they do the integration first, and after that, the north and the south have the integration. So this period takes about 300-400 years. So that's my answer.
Right.
That's a very interesting period of time, but it's also very complex. You find out it's difficult to understand, a lot of number, a lot of name. That's common because it's difficult. CK, you have something to say? Sorry, I put you on hold.
No worries. I have a comment and a question.
Okay,
a comment about the Song sisters vis-a-vis these Dugu sisters, which I find rather amusing. It's not totally out of order for that comparison, because I think the Song sisters originally, their family came from Hainan Island, which is or was at the fringe of the empire, of the fringe of Chinese civilization. So in a way, they could be considered also proto-barbarians that entered Chinese civilization, if you want to make the kind of a stretch of a comparison. A question for Quan. The surname Dugu, my understanding is that this surname is a Xianbei surname, but you mentioned that it's a Turkic surname. Are they Turks or Tujue, or are they Xianbei? That is my question.
Yes, thank you, CK, for your excellent question. Right. I would say that you're right to make the distinction, because the Xianbei, Xianbei, for the others, by strict definition, they were not Turkic, they were Proto-Mongols, okay? Because as you know, they live in the Xing'an range of mountains, or Qing'an in English, which is at the border of what we call Northeast China nowadays, bordering on Mongolia. So by strict ethnographic definition, they were Proto-Mongols and not Turkic. So please forgive me when I say Turkic, please understand nomadic people in general.
I saw Alan, you have a hands up, and do you still have a comment or question?
Oh, yes, thanks. I feel refreshed, bombarded with facts and dates. Personally, I feel refreshed. The question I have is 1,800 years ago, where are the historical records that can enable you historians can kind of educate us with all these facts. My question is, what are the historical records which were kept so that we can talk about it today?
Okay. For example, I mentioned the friendship between Yu Wentai and Su Chuo. Yu Wentai born in 507 and died in 556, and Su Chuo born in 497 and died in 546. Su Chuo was a Chinese scholar. So when he helped Yu Wentai to create the Northern Zhou dynasty, he introduced the historical records as has been done regularly with the usual Chinese dynasty. And when Empress Dowager Feng tutored her grandson, Emperor Xiao Wen of the Wei dynasty, she also introduced records keeping as has been done for a long time by the regular Chinese dynasty. And from those records, which were kept, and from archaeological findings, for example, Datong, the first capital city of the Wei dynasty, has been investigated by many archaeologists during the last 2 centuries. And we have a lot of data from those textual research and archaeological research, just to focus on the Northern Zhou dynasty and the Wei dynasty, but the same answer can be generalized for the other dynasties too, of course.
Thank you.
I saw Ginny, or you have a question from the chat. You want to talk about the rural incorporated Han culture? You still have a question, or you want to say something? No? Okay.
Okay, are there other questions or comments?
Yeah, so you can. Any other question or comment? If not, then we can move on. Okay,
so I want to say that in Chinese history, there are many moments of major importance. One of those moments probably is the creation of the Zhou dynasty in 1046 BCE, the life of Confucius in let's say around 500 BCE, the creation of the empire in 221 BCE, the collapse of the Han dynasty in 220 BCE, and the period of great disunion and the different culture in the south and the north, as Jason stressed 10 minutes ago, is another very important moment in the creation of the Chinese civilizational matrix. But I see Jane hand, so I stop here and I would let her ask her question or say her comment.
So, my name's Jeannie. I actually wrote my question in the chat because I had a lot of background noise, so I didn't want to unmute myself. But
Okay.
my question is basically what I wrote in the chat, and it's just because I had background noise. That's why I didn't want to talk.
Okay, now do you have that background noise? Now is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so can you ask your question?
Okay, so the question I wrote in the chat is like, what do you think of when the ruler incorporated Han culture and language into his rule? This is something I got from the reading that you guys reference on Meetup. So I'm just asking your opinion on that.
Okay, so let's not forget that the nomadic people most of the time did not have a writing system nor a philosophical system or in administrative structure. So when they interact with the Han Chinese, meaning Zhongyuan, okay, because as I said, the main concept of my presentation today is the rebirth of the Chinese Empire by the dynamic interaction between Zhongyuan, Z-H-O-N-G, Zhong, Yuan, Y-U-A-N, meaning the central plain, where is the Confucianist aristocracy and the traditional Chinese culture, and the Cao Yuan, C-A-O, Yuan, Y-U-A-N, meaning the prairies or the nomadic plains. When you have the interaction of the nomadic aristocracy and of the central aristocracy, it is, let's say, an expected reality within the flow of Chinese history that the nomadic aristocracy would accept the intellectual and ideological framework coming from the central plain aristocracy, and that the central plain aristocracy would benefit from the military power and the military organization coming from the nomadic aristocracy. And the combination of the Guanlong aristocracy and of the Yang noble house is the perfect illustration in flesh, so to speak, because they combine in flesh of that dynamic integration into something new of the Chinese civilizational matrix, but starting from the own tradition that we can trace back to the Zhou dynasty in 1046 BCE. So it's renewal or rejuvenation, but from a, I don't want to say everlasting because it would be a little bit exaggerated, but from a permanent basis, let's say, from a permanent ideological foundation coming from the Zhou dynasty, having started in 1046 BCE.
So I do have my view is this, Kwang. I would say like the integration never smooth. Okay, so when you talk about the Taoist emperor's phone, have the so-called synthesization, right? So this one basically we can see the nomad tribe see the Chinese culture as a high culture. They start to, I think they have a lot of change. They change the clothes. They force people speak not necessarily Mandarin, but the Han language, and they use Chinese character. And this one also caused the problem. That's why we have the so-called rebellion of the 6 tongues, right? And yes. Through this, a lot of, I don't know all the detail, but all the detail happened. Then eventually, that's why I think that's a good equation. The Zhongyuan plus Caoyuan will be equal to the Guanlong aristocracy. So basically, through this the synthesization plus the rebellion of the 6 tongues, and then eventually they intermarried and they created the new aristocracy family, which we call the Guanlong family, and dominated the northern China. That would be my view to this.
I think, Jason, that you make a good synthesis of what happened. Okay, because it was a marriage in flesh, but also a marriage in ideology, and the Tang dynasty definitely is the chime of that combination of the intellectual framework of the Zhongyuan aristocracy and of the military power of the Caoyuan aristocracy. And that was, I would say that the first empire happened in 221 BCE. And the Tang dynasty, of course, they were others dynasty between the Qin in 221 BCE and the Tang in 618 BCE. But I would say that if the first empire happened in 221 BCE, the second empire happened in 618 with the Tang, because a lot of things happened between those two moments. And as I said, contrary to Europe, which evolved into powerful different countries from the collapse of the Roman Empire after the invasion of the Germanic tribes led by the Germanic leaders. In the case of China, the empire was reborn. And the rebirth of the empire was a lot thanks to that Guanlong aristocracy and of the Yang noble house. Because once again, I repeat that, okay, because that's the easy way to remember that. The Sui dynasty, which did not last very long since it started in 581 and ended in 618, was a major moment because Yang Jian, Y-A-N-G, the emperor, was from the Yang noble house, and Tuku Jialo was a member of the Guanlong aristocracy. So that marriage in flesh was the perfect incarnation or the perfect symbol for that integration of the Cao Yuan aristocracy and the Zhongyuan aristocracy. And once again, I cannot repeat that too many times. It's one of the major moments of Chinese history. If there are no other questions or comments, I can keep on the presentation with the map of the 6 towns, please, Jason. Okay, so you can easily recognize the Huanghe, the Yellow River, with you see the Northern Wei here, and you see that pink area in at the north of the Yellow River. That pink area, okay, that Jason just stressed with a red pen, is the area of what is called the 6 towns or the 6 garrison towns or the 6 frontier towns. You will have many translation, and I don't want to name them, but you can read the name. For example, Woye, Huaishuo, and Wuchuang. Wuchuang is very important because Yu Wentai, the creator of the Northern Zhou dynasty, was the military commander of Wuchuang. Okay, and you have 3 other towns to the east forming the 6 towns or the 6 garrison towns. And the nomadic people, but the nomadic people was, how can I say that, had their base in those 6 towns. And when Emperor Xiaowen decided in 494 to move the capital city from Datong to the north to Luoyang completely to the south, those people, the military commanders in the garrisons on the 6 military garrison of 6 military towns were not very happy because they were completely marginalized since the imperial court decided for a complete Sinicization. So they decided to enter into rebellion in 523. And let's not forget that the dynasty, the Northern Wei dynasty, collapsed in 534. So 11 years after the rebellions of the 6 garrisons. There is a direct correlation between the rebellion of the 6 garrison in 523 and the collapse of the Northern Wei dynasty in 534, of course. But at the same time, it was not a good event for the Northern Wei dynasty. But if we see Chinese history in a broader perspective, it was in the right direction of history, of universal history, because it wouldn't allow the creation of the Northern Zhou dynasty, afterwards the Sui dynasty, and finally the Tang dynasty, which was the complete rebirth of the Chinese empire. So you had the Qin dynasty in 221 BCE, which lasted only 14 years, the 400 years long Han dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, the period of the 3 kingdoms, the unstable Jing dynasty, the Guanlong aristocracy combined with the Yang noble house, and the return of the empire with the Tang dynasty. So the rebellion of the 6 military towns in 523, once again, was a bad thing for the Wei dynasty, but it was a good thing for Chinese history in general. And I see here that Jason put once again the general chronology of Chinese history, so you can appreciate the importance of the Qing dynasty and the Guanlong aristocracy in the red part between 300 and 600, more or less, or to be precise, 317 to 581. So we spoke about the 6 towns. We spoke about the family chart of the Guanlong aristocracy, the founder of the Northern Zhou. I think that here the 8 pillars.
The 8 pillar state.
Yes, please go ahead.
General, the 12th general during that time.
Yes, yes. Okay. No, it's a good idea, because when I was speaking of the fact that the integration of the nomadic aristocracy brought a lot to the Chinese central plain aristocracy, I think that the system, what was called the 8 pillar of the state, okay, because the 8 pillars of the state are the 8 persons that you see the name here, okay? So you have Yu Wentai himself at number 1, okay? You have Yu Wentai, which is at the 2nd line. The first line is An Ting Kong. It was his nobility title, okay? Let's say the Duke of Establishing Peace, we can translate more or less like that, but his name Yu Wentai is on the 2nd line. So he was, after that you have another guy named Yuan, and after that you have Chao Kui. Okay, on Chao Kui you have Li Hu at the number 3. And you have Tuku Sin at number 2. Okay, so number 4, you have Yang Zhong. Okay, so you have those aristocrats who were Chinese and who were Xianpei. And the combination or the integration of the 2 groups of Chinese and of nomadic people first has been well illustrated by the family chart that we talked half an hour ago. And on the 2nd level is illustrated by the military organization called the 8 pillar state of the state and the 12 general, meaning that you have the graphic representation of the military organization, which allow the Western Wei dynasty in the first time, and on the 2nd time, the Northern Zhou dynasty, and at the 3rd time or 3rd level, the Sui dynasty and the Tang dynasty, to be so efficient and be capable to win battles, okay? Because I want to make a jump in time. Let's not forget that the Tang dynasty was victorious many times during the 1st century. Why? Because they inherited the military organization of the 8 pillar of the states, even if administratively, later on, the Tang dynasty would not necessarily keep exactly the same organization, but they wouldn't have the legacy of that military efficiency from the 8 pillar of the state organization. I just want to remind 4 major victories by the Tang dynasty, which for me is the direct legacy of that military organization. In 630, okay, so once again, the Tang dynasty has been created in 618 and ended in 907. In 630, 630, General Li Jing was victorious over the Eastern Turk. And in 643, Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty himself was victorious over the Western Turk and expanding the territory of China of the time by practically 8 to 10 million square kilometers. In 663 CE, you have the victory in Korea, of the Battle of Baijiang, or Baijiangkou, I'm sorry. And more importantly, and that battle is not very well known in the West, but the Battle of Aksu in 707, when the Tang Empire was victorious against the Umayyad dynasty in Central Asia. And because of that victory of the Battle of Aksu, AKSU, the Muslim expansion to the east has been stopped. Okay, so if I said that it was in 707, I was mistaken. The Battle of Aksu, AKSU, was in 717. And I would say that for those who know Western history, the Battle of Aksu for China was as important than the Battle of Poitiers in 732 by the grandfather of Charlemagne, Charles Martel, against the Muslim in southern France. So if you had the Battle of Poitiers in 732 in France, stopping the Muslim advance in the West, while in the East you had the Battle of Aksu in 717, stopping the Muslim advance to the East. So I just want to mention that rapprochement between the Battle of Poitiers and the Battle of Aksu. Once again, the Battle of Poitiers in 732 and the Battle of Aksu, AKSU, in 717. I think I repeated 3 times, but it's an important event in history that not many people are aware of. May I see the other slide that you prepare, Jason?
Okay. So you want to talk about? I think here, Jimmy has another question. Jimmy, you want to speak or you want me to read for you? Okay. She said, you mentioned the combining military power with literacy strength of Han side, but do you think Robert Greene was right in his book, The 48 Laws of Power, that by assimilating the Han, who was previously the enemy, it was a political move to gain more power and reduce his chance of a coup? I'm not sure who is Robert Greene.
Robert Greene's an author who wrote a book called The 48 Laws of Power. One of them referenced a situation in China where the rulers were going back and forth. When one died, the other would go in power, and then that side would get revenge and kill off the other side. So they just kept killing each other back and forth, and the power kept shifting between 2 sides. And he said one day, one of the rulers actually treated the losing side very well and made them like into generals and gave them positions of power, gave them land and money. And by treating them really well, they actually felt like really guilty and they wanted to prove their loyalty, so they didn't assassinate him. So I'm wondering like what you think about that in regards to this ruler incorporating the like Han culture and language. Because previously the Wikipedia article mentioned that they would suppress the Han culture, but then this ruler actually encouraged it.
Yes, I would say that it was that explanation is certainly valuable, and I would say that it was according to my understanding, it was a marriage made in heaven. Okay, because the nomadic aristocracy had the military power, but they didn't have the administrative framework, and they didn't have a writing system, and they didn't have a philosophy and a structure for the state. The Han people had those things, and the combination was obvious, and it was not done without incidents, without revolts and the rebellion of the Six Towns is a perfect illustration of that, okay? Because the military commanders of those Six Towns were pure nomadic aristocrats, if you want. They didn't want to participate too much in all those intellectual stuff and administrative shenanigans for them. And the fact that the capital city has been moved from Pingcheng to Luoyang has been an obvious loss for them, because the center of power was removed so far away from them. Okay, if you will remember the map, the Six Towns were completely north of the Yellow River, and Luoyang was practically 1,000 kilometers to the south, if not more than 1,000 kilometers. And let's not forget, it was the 6th century. There were no train, no airplane, and stuff like that. So it's tantamount for them to be completely disconnected from the center of power. But at the same time, they were the most advanced elements within the nomadic aristocracy, understood perfectly that they don't have a very bright future if they don't want to incorporate the administrative framework and the writing system. So I would say that the best elements from both sides understood that it was in their favor to combine. As I said, it was a marriage made in heaven, but once again, it has not been done without many incidents and many losses of life. After all, the process happened over 3 centuries, or practically. And the fact that it ended with the marriage of Yang Jian, a Han Chinese from the noble house of the Yang from Hongnong, and Tuku Jialo, a member of the Guanlong aristocracy, it was the perfect ending for me.
Can we continue? Oh.
May I see the other slide, please? I think that we cover everything that is truly major and important. Yeah. I would favor a general discussion rather than giving more details.
You want to talk about? Oh yeah, I think you want to talk about the people, the two Roran and the so-called Turk, the Go-Turk. You want to talk about this? That's a
yeah. Well, I would say that the Gok turn will be important during the. If you see the first Turkic Khaganate, that land is a big land. It's practically 10 million square kilometers. And when I talk about and as you see, that empire lasted from 552 to 630, and in 630, General Li Jing, L-I, his family name, Jing, J-I-N-G, his given name of the Tang Dynasty, conquer, let's say, about 3 million square kilometers to the east, and Emperor Taizong of the Tang Dynasty in 643 conquered the western part, corresponding more or less to 6 to 7 million square kilometers. And from that moment, 643, the Tang Dynasty will remain the suzerain of that Turkic land for practically to 755. And it's the only time in Chinese history for about a century, from 643 to 755, that the Chinese Empire reached about to 15 million square kilometers. And it would not reach that kind of size before the Qing Dynasty, the last dynasty, having ruled from 1644 to 1912. And the land of the Qing Dynasty at its greatest extent was 13 million square kilometers. So still a little bit less than the 15 million square kilometers between 643 and 755. Okay, so I see Fred's hand.
In this and other slides, there is understandably an enormous influence and conflict with the Turkic elements, I should say, Siberia, Turkey, and so forth. And nothing to the south, India in particular. Is that because of the natural barrier of the Himalayas?
Absolutely. The Himalayas play an immense role, except to the west, okay? Because if you know your Indian history, you have the famous Khyber Pass, Khyber, for those who don't know the Khyber Pass, between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Turkic people invaded India from the western side, because on the eastern side, the Himalayas, of course, are an how can I say it, an indomitable obstacle. So, but India did not escape the rule of the Turkic people, because they went into India by the Khyber Pass from Afghanistan, well, what we call Afghanistan nowadays, to Pakistan and to India.
So I do have my my answer on to Fred's question, right? So I think to forget about, before we talk about India, there's another great kingdom, is Tibet, right? So what they call it, during the
Tufan.
Tufan, yeah.
Tufan,
so basically, yeah, they are probably more powerful, at least the equivalent powerful to the Tang Dynasty, okay, during that time, okay. And before the North and the China, you cross the river, the Yangtze River. That's another big challenge during that time. So when the Sui dynasties, Yangjian, united to the south, that's also a challenge, because you have to cross the river. The Yellow River probably in the my understanding is during the winter it's frozen, so you can cross over. But the Yangtze River never froze. Okay, so it's still difficult to pass over. That's why in the southern part, they live a totally different life than the northern part, the Chinese. They kind of like forget about the northern part. They enjoy their life because they believe the Yangtze River is the protection. So there's no way you can cross the river. So I think that's the natural barrier for them. And talk about India, my concern will be less than conquer India, more than India go to China, because remember, they probably have a higher culture, put this way, higher in the sense about Buddhism, because that's the peak time of the Buddhism culture. So in the 6th, 7th century, a lot of Buddhism monk, they went to China, and then also Chinese sent people to India to learn the Buddhism philosophy, Buddhism culture. So the situation is very different than today. Yeah.
Okay, I see CK's hand. Do you see other hand,
yeah,
Jason?
CK, please. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I just want to make a point. I think the pronunciation for Tibet in the old days is actually Tu Bo, not Tufan. Okay. It's mostly always been said as Tufan, because that's how people normally pronounce that word, but it actually is pronounced as Tu Bo. And
yes,
another comment about the reason or reasons why the Xianbei peoples incorporated the Han people into this Guanlong aristocracy and established 4 dynasties afterwards to that laid the foundation for the unification of China under the Sui and the Tang dynasties. It's because if you don't synthesize, you can't manage or you can't rule northern China unless you kill off all the Han people. But if you do that, there is nobody to till the land. There is nobody to give you food or sustenance. So in order to control the northern part of China, you have to become Chinese, in a sense. You have to become Han Chinese. Otherwise, you can't rule them. So the same there's two examples from later on in Chinese history. The Mongols did not Sinicize, therefore their rule over the whole of China eventually failed. The Manchus Sinicized, and the Manchus successfully ruled China for over 260 years. Then I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think, CK, you said something very interesting. I know that the question is not easy to solve like that, but what would be your hypothesis that in Europe, the Roman Empire was not reborn, in the Western Roman Empire, because we know that the Eastern Roman Empire lasted to 1453, but the Western Roman Empire, after the Germanic leaders went south, that was not reborn. It could have. What do you think?
Well, there are many complicated factors. There's no one factor that will explain it all, but geography probably plays a role because Europe has all these rivers that flow westwards, that intersect, that cuts across the land. Whereas in China, there are two great rivers, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, and of course the Zhujiang River in the far south. But if you want to rule over China, it's more prone to unity than Europe, because Europe is more prone to fragmentation geographically. Well, we can discuss this later on, but there is a very complicated situation in Europe.
Complicated contrarily or complicated otherwise? Because I tend to buy your explanation of the fact that Europe is more divided into smaller valleys geographically and given birth to natural unities of what we call countries. But do you see complicated factors, contrarily speaking?
Yes. One factor is there are not enough Romans. The Romans are not an overriding majority. They have all these so-called barbarians that later on became so-called Romans by the granting of citizenship. But these barbarians were not Romanized long enough. And many of them, became Roman today and then became barbarian tomorrow. So, the commitment to Roman citizenship is not that stable. Whereas in the case of China, the Han people have an overwhelming numbers in terms of masses, unless you kill them all off, which is cultural and racial genocide. You can't help but to become like them. That's not the case for the Romans.
Yes, I suppose that Roman citizenship has been granted quite late by Emperor Caracalla in 212. And since the crisis of the 4th century in 300 something happened just 4 generations later, I suppose that Roman citizenship did not penetrate deeply enough in the hearts of the people at that time. I suppose it's a quite acceptable explanation, CK.
Well, it's the best I can offer right now. Maybe after dinner, I'll give a better one.
Yeah,
okay,
after dinner.
We probably have to stop on this one, compare Rome with China this time.
Yeah.
Any other comment or anything, Kwang, any other thing?
I just want to take 5 minutes to remind some important moments within the Wei dynasty, if it's okay. It will take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said that the Northern Wei ruled from 386 to 534, meaning for 149 years. It split into the Western Wei from 535 to 557. It lasted for 22 years. And it split it also into the Eastern Wei from 534 to 550 for 16 years. And from the Western Wei, the Northern Zhou dynasty will rise from 557 to 581. And in 581, the Sui dynasty will replace the Northern Zhou to 618. And 618, of course, is the beginning of the Tang dynasty. which will end in 907, practically 3 centuries later. Okay, that's I call the true second empire. If you want, the first one being the 14 years of the short-lived but important Qin dynasty, and the Han Empire, which lasted for 400 years. So I would call the Qin Han the first empire, and the Tang dynasty as being the second empire. So going back to that famous and important Wei dynasty for the history of China, their capital city was Pingcheng, Pingcheng, and the name of Pingcheng nowadays is Datong, Datong. So D in Pinyin is pronounced like a T, okay? So Datong is pronounced Datong. The T is an aspirated T, Datong. And it has been.
Datong and the Taiyuan are the same one or different?
Taiyuan is Jingyuan. Jingyuan was the old name of Taiyuan, okay. And Datong is the present-day name of Pingcheng. So Pingcheng has been chosen as the capital city of the Wei dynasty, or to be precise, of the Northern Wei dynasty in 394.
Oh, yes. I got it.
And you can have something very interesting in case you go in China to Datong. You have what is called the Yungang Grotto. Okay, Yungang, Yungang. Those are giant Buddhist sculptures that are very magnificent to look at. And if you have the occasion, it's quite a view. The other moment that I want to mention during the Northern Wei dynasty is that in 426, a temple for Confucius has been built in Pingcheng, and it has been a very important moment in the Sinicization process of the Northern Wei dynasty. And as I said, that process of Sinicization has not been smooth, okay? You have many incidents during the adventure, if I may say so. A Chinese official, Cui Hao, C-U-I, his family name, Hao, H-A-O, his given name, in 439, wrote a book concerning the history of the Northern Wei, and the Xianpei aristocrats, the nomadic aristocrats, managed to get him executed in 450. Okay, so it just to show that 10 years after he wrote a book about the Northern Wei dynasty in the style of the traditional Chinese dynasty, commissioned by the ruling emperor, to be exact, 11 years later in 450, the nomadic aristocrats managed to get him executed, just to show you that the struggle between the nomadic aristocrats and the Chinese aristocrat, or I prefer to say the Zhongyuan aristocrat, was keeping on, because those Caoyuan aristocrat and those Zhongyuan aristocrat will integrate together later on to be the Chinese aristocracy. And finally, we go to what is called the Taihe era. Taihe is T-A-I-H-E, and it's the era of the rule of Emperor Xiaowen, X-I-A-O-W-E-N, from 471 to 499. And that is the emperor who was advised by his grandmother, Empress Dowager Feng, F-E-N-G, who was born in 442 and who died in 490. So she lived only 48 years, but during those 48 years, she has done a lot. And as I said earlier, they moved the capital city from Pingcheng, or Datong nowadays, to Luoyang in 494. In 523, about 30 years later, the revolt of the six military towns, or the 6 garrison towns, And the collapse of the Northern Wei dynasty in 534, giving rise to the Western Wei dynasty, which will give rise to the Northern Zhou dynasty, who will give rise once again to the Sui dynasty and to the Tang dynasty, having ruled from 618 to 907. So I'm aware that it doesn't cover everything from that very interesting period, but I choose to stop here and to open a second period of question and answer if there are questions and comments.
So if any question, comment, please raise your hand if you have any question or comment. So I probably will, Kwang, you have, I just want to remind everyone, like, you know, that's this period of time, if you find out it's difficult to, it's difficult to everybody, even you are student of Chinese history. That's the most difficult part. And because I just want to remind everyone, I put some slide here. I don't want to redo it, because last year, I think around July, I do the presentation about exactly the same period of time. I also call it the Great Disunion, but I focus on the southern part. Okay, so you can see, I'm not going to go through everything. You can see the slide I show is totally opposite than today's presentation. So since they live on the south of the Yangtze River, so people believe they are safe. So they start to enjoy their life, and then so that's called the seven sages of the bamboo grove. That's the most famous one. So what they are doing, they drinking, they study philosophy, they talk about metaphysical, and the one famous thing is so-called the pure talk, pure conversation, 清谈. So they keep talking about all the high philosophical questions and pursue happiness, pursue freedom. So if you only see this part, and I remember the time people ask me, what's going on the north part? I just can simply answer, okay, they are focused more on the Confucianism, and they deal with the military, and there's a lot of war over there. That's my only answer. And you have to wait until today, Kwang give you answer, because there's a lot of power struggle over there. And if you want to ask which side is better, you will see the result. Eventually, the southern doesn't conquer the north conquer the south, because they have the military power. So that's it. That's what I have to say for today. And then Kwang, I will have Aaron with hands up.
No, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. Yeah,
Great,
no,
great,
thank
Aaron.
you. Thank you so much for this, because this is
Great to have you here, Aaron.
yeah, no, I appreciate it, Jason. I mean, you did an amazing job. I mean, this is such a rich
I know you are expert on the history.
No, I don't know anyone that could be, actually. I mean, what I found is it's so hard to keep it all together in one story in your head, because it's almost as absurd trying to know all of the great Chinese history, especially during these periods, as imagine someone saying, well, I'm learning everything that happened in Western Eurasia, right? I mean, it sounds absurd, right? I mean, really, like everything, Russia, Byzantium, Ottomans, all the Prussian, 1,000 different pieces of the Holy Roman Empire, the French, the English, and everything they were doing, breaking themselves up. So, I mean, to me, that's the great thing that you've done is allowed this sort of layering to go on, because I think, especially when Chinese isn't native to your native tongue, and you don't learn history, Chinese history from being a child and from being in a family and so on, trying to pick this up in adulthood is so much work because you're really trying to keep the chronology and all the pieces kind of working together.
So
You know, I don't know if that makes sense to you. Yeah. I don't know if that, if you understand what I mean by that. Like, as an outsider, it's really a challenge, and it's impressive that you guys have been able to, obviously, you know, your history helps, but just the work you've done, because I know after, you know, reading a few dozen books on Chinese history the last 30 years of my life, sometimes I feel like I know less than I did after I read my first book. You know, after like my first Tuckman book, I always felt like I knew more then than I do now, because it's so layered. You know, you realize that you pull on one thread of something you thought you understood about a reign, and you realize that reign was just, you know, impacted by conflict going on, let's say, in the North, which, you know, I think the North for outsiders is really hard to know. You know.
Yeah. So I hope that the image or the metaphor, it's not even a metaphor, but it's the reality of the intermarriages of the Guanlong aristocracy and of the Yang noble house can give a kind of flesh to that period of history.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think if anything, especially for Westerners, that's the piece. You know, we tend to be so engineered around battles and chronology, you know, warfare, conflict, because, you know, that's that European sort of geographic history. But, you know, it tends to be a struggle to really understand the intermarriage, you know, like the way that we in the West will learn the Tudors versus the Stuarts, you know, versus the War of the Roses, you know, like that, you know, and there's, you know, a zillion TV shows and books written about them, fictional, nonfiction, you name it. And that's the piece I've always felt is so missing, learning, you know, great ancient Chinese history without becoming an academic, obviously, because most people for fun don't really want to become an academic. But I really appreciate that. It was really, really rich, really great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's go to Fred, please.
Yeah, that was Quan Lee. That was just a great overview. It's just so intricate and rich and complex. It's hard to penetrate in a way all the intricacies of the dynasty and the like. And so I am forced to kind of zoom out and get a very global, you know, almost international perspective just to make sense of it all. So in that context, I'm just wondering what's going on at this time, and you can ignore this question if you want, or if it's out of context. At the time, what's going on in Japan? Is that just a sleepy island to the west?
Oh no.
Yeah. You mean what happened in Japan at the time in the 6th century?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in Japan at the time, it was what was called the Asuka period. Okay, Asuka, Asuka, and the Asuka period started with the introduction of Buddhism. The accepted moment is 530 ACE. Okay, from the Korean Peninsula, and you had the aristocratic struggle like everywhere in the world during that time, between the Soga clan and the which were more traditional, and the modernist clan, if you want, of Prince Shotoku Taishu, who was born in 574, I think. Maybe I might make a mistake by some years, but around 574, and he died in 522. So 522, no, 622, I'm sorry, I make a mistake by a century. He was born in 574 and he died in 622, okay? And let's not forget that the Tang Dynasty was created in 618. So, as you know, Japan has been greatly influenced by the culture of the Tang Dynasty and they were maybe 19 or 20 missions from Japan to China, starting in 607, meaning under the Sui dynasty, and ending at the end of the 9th century, if I remember, 800 something. So Japan was, I'm careful here because I don't want to say something clumsy. Japan was maybe a more tribal society, okay, at the time of the 6th century, and they wouldn't get the administrative framework and the ideological framework from the Tang Dynasty to create their glorious Heian culture later on, okay, because the Heian culture will start in 794 and will end in 1185. So that glorious Heian culture from Japan will be a direct legacy of the Tang Dynasty as digested and transformed by the Japanese. But they were still, and here I'm be careful, okay, because I don't want to offend anyone. They were still a kind of a tribal organization at the time of the 6th century, or the 5th and the 6th century that we are speaking of now.
Okay, thanks. At some point, Japan laid claim to Manchuria, and there was contest with China over Manchuria, and Japan seemed to think that they had some legacy or right to it. Is that just an invention leading up to World War II, or does that go way back to this period of history?
I would say that, let's say that's my opinion. Okay, so from the moment I say my opinion, I'm free to say what I want. I think that Manchuria was a land of what we call Tungusic people. Okay, Tungusic. Okay, Tungusic people is a branch of the Turkic people, so they don't have any relationship with the Japanese, according to what I know. You have two layers of Japanese people. Okay, the Japanese people who are called the Ainu, A-I-N-U, which is the first layer of the Japanese people. They have been pushed to the north, to the Hokkaido island. And the second wave of Japanese people would be from mainland China long ago. Okay, maybe according to some researchers, they were from the province that the Chinese call Zhejiang and Gansu nowadays. And the imperial family of Japan, and they themselves acknowledge that, it's not an urban legend, the imperial family of Japan is from Korean ancestry, okay? Because during the Yamato period, meaning before the Asuka period, having started in 538 with the introduction of Buddhism, some Korean aristocrats moved to what is the central Japan now, in the island of Honshu, and they created the Yamato dynasty, which still exists nowadays, and they acknowledge their Korean origin. So in the case of Japan, it's complex, and I dare say that it's a fantasy from them to imagine that they have a right to the 3 provinces of Manchuria, which are Chinese provinces, by the way.
Well, thank you. But yeah, it's also another complex situation. But Fred, if you can wait for another 100 years in the Tang Dynasty, then that would be much easier to answer, because during that time, there's a lot of influence from Tang Dynasty to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, classical Japanese culture is Tang Dynasty culture, to say things in a simple manner.
Yeah. So if you go to the Kyoto, right, that's a totally mimic the Tang Dynasty Chang'an's building, and so that's the peak of their synthesization. Let's put it this way. CK, please. You have hands up.
Yes, I was thinking about a reverse process to this Sinicization process that was achieved by the Guanlong aristocracy. Back in around 325 BCE to 299 BCE, during the Warring States era of China, there was a king, Zhao Wulin Wang, King Wulin of the state of Zhao, who de-Sinicized, if we can put it that way, the Zhao soldiery, and introduced cavalry, reformed the military attire and the military discipline of the soldiery of the state of Zhao by adopting the ways of the Hu. So in Chinese, it's called Hu Fu Qi She, adopting the clothing of the Hu people and to shoot from horseback while riding horses. So at the time when he introduced these reforms in the state of Zhao, he met with stiff and absolute opposition from everybody in court. So he went to court dressed like a nomad, and then he forced everybody to dress like a nomad. And then, when all these people resisted, he carried on nonetheless, and he led his troops, who are now cavalry, trained by people who are well versed in the nomadic arts of horse riding and shooting arrows, especially the Parthian shot, and won victories against the Hu, or later on the Xiongnu. So by winning, he succeeded in the introduction of these reforms. So, if you want to do something, you have to win. And in the case of the Guanlong aristocracy, they won by their reforms. They accept the reality that there were more Han people in northern China than there were Xianbei people or other nomads. So if you want to rule the Han people, you have to become like the Han people, or at least mix with them and then incorporate them into your rule. And I think that this reverse process was itself interesting.
Yes. And I think you commented very interesting, CK, because I would say that the Tang Dynasty received that openness, of that mind openness from Cao Yuan. And once again, civilization can only be reborn when you have an expansion of the mind, and precisely that the integration of the Cao Yuan aristocracy and the Zhong Yuan aristocracy is a living example of an expansion of the mind that will give birth to an expansion in reality.
Right, thank you, Kwang. I think that's a very good a conclusion for today's session. We need to expand our mind, okay? Caoyuan, Zongyuan, Western, Asian, and then I think that's our purpose. We try to expand our mind and be open-minded, and even we have another different opinion. We may disagree with each other, like Kwang and I. We know we disagree on many things, but that's a good part. So he can provide some part of history or the view, and I totally not understand. Or not, I should say I understand, but not look at it this way. But anyway, Kwang, you have anything to say today?
No, and once again, Jason, thank you very much for the magnificent family charts that you prepare for the Guanlong aristocracy, because it was a central piece of the presentation and of the beautiful maps, of course. And thanks everyone for having come.
Okay, thank you. And next week, happy Thanksgiving if you are in America. And then December 2nd, I will talk about the more light story of the Taoist tale from Zhuangzi, the book, kind of conclude the whole Taoism. So, CK, you have a final word? Or do you have final words?
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking about the discussion about Japanese claims to Manchuria. I was just thinking about this because I think from the Japanese mentality at the time, one of the chief reasons why they claimed Manchuria was because, and this logic is the logic of thieves, they have expended over 100,000 men in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. So they lost over 100,000 men, and therefore they believe that by shedding blood on Manchurian soil, that made Manchurian Japanese. Manchuria Japanese, because they lost so many men, protecting Asia from the encroachment of the infidel West. So therefore, that is their claim to Manchuria, or the basis of their claim, which I, of course, do not agree. But that is, if you read the literature that the Japanese wrote during the period, 1905 or up till the 1930s or 1940s, that really was the basis of their claim.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. So that's conclude for today's session, and then happy Thanksgiving, and hope see you everyone on December 2nd. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Quan Lee. It's really good.
Thanks.